Hi, my name's Jane Vafusuanga. I'm an author. I write for children. This is my latest book. It's called Uncle Tino, and this is a story about a Samoan family who live in New Zealand. But actually today I'm here in Samoa, so I'm reading to you from Samoa, but it's a story about New Zealand. The title is Uncle Tino. I'm the author, Jane Vafusuanga, and these beautiful illustrations that you'll see are by Nanette Leila Ulu. She's really talented, and the story was published by Little Island Press. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Uncle Tino. Uncle Tino dropped James and Jessie off at the corner just before their school and then drove away, honking his car horn loudly. The twins cringed and looked around to see if anyone was watching. "Phew," said James. "I don't think anyone saw us today." "Thank goodness," said Jessie. "Uncle Tino's car isn't exactly the latest model, and it's so embarrassing when he honks his horn like that." "Let's ask Mum if we can walk to school from now on," said James. "We can say that we want to get more exercise." "That's an awesome idea," agreed Jessie, "but don't tell her the real reason we want to walk. She'll just remind us again that Uncle Tino's just arrived from Samoa and everyone honks their car horns there," sighed James. Later, when the twins were doing their homework, James asked Mum about walking to school. "You're always telling us we need to keep fit," he said. "Yes," said Jessie, "and we'll walk together so we'll be safe." "Okay," said Mum, "if that's what you really want to do, but I'm sure Uncle Tino will be disappointed. He likes driving you two to school." Mum pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of Jessie's school bag and studied it. "This is a notice about culture groups," she said. "Culture groups?" asked Uncle Tino, walking into the room. "Yes," said Mum. "The school needs some helpers for the Samoan group. You could do that, Tino." Uncle Tino nodded his head. "Sounds great," he said. James and Jessie looked at each other. They both knew that once Uncle Tino made up his mind about something, nothing could change it. At the first culture group practice, the twins' teacher, Mrs. Falefa, led the group as usual, and Uncle Tino played the guitar. He seemed to know all the songs, and the kids sang extra loudly. "Whawhetai lava, Tino," said Mrs. Falefa. "After the practice, our songs sound so much better with the guitar." Uncle Tino smiled. "I'm glad to help, Mrs. Falefa," he said in Samoan. "I'll bring my pate," that's a drum, next week, so I can play the drum for the sa-sa. Uncle Tino quickly became popular with the kids in the Samoan culture group. He taught the boys a slap dance, and he could play any song on the guitar. All the kids laughed when Uncle Tino danced, even James and Jessie. "Your uncle's cool," James said Afa. "I wish I could dance like him." "I wish my dad could play the guitar like Uncle Tino," Grace whispered to Jessie. Mrs. Falefa began holding extra culture group practices for the school's end-of-year concert. Uncle Tino came to every practice with his pate and guitar. Afterwards, he drove James and Jessie home in his old car, honking his horn and shouting goodbye to all the kids. James and Jessie didn't shrink down in the back seat of the car like they used to. They even began waving to their friends. The night of the concert finally arrived. James and Jessie were so excited. Uncle Tino said he had to pick his friend up on the way and he would meet them at the hall, so the twins went with Mum and Dad in the van. As soon as they got there, James and Jessie changed into their costumes with all the other kids. Everyone was ready and the concert had started, but Uncle Tino wasn't there. Jessie began to get worried. The Samoan group was on stage next and Uncle Tino still hadn't shown up. Suddenly, a car pulled into the school car park with its horn honking loudly. "Uncle Tino's here!" shouted all the kids. Uncle Tino ran into the hall carrying his guitar. His friend carried the pate. Mrs. Falefa quickly lined up the culture group and led them onto the stage. Uncle Tino said something in Samoan to his friend, who nodded. Uncle Tino ran onto the stage and began to strum the guitar. It was showtime. James and Jessie joined all the other kids. They sang loudly and danced their hearts out. The boys' actions were strong, just like Uncle Tino had taught them, and the girls were very graceful. The audience clapped and cheered. Uncle Tino danced and everyone laughed when he did some of his funny moves. James and Jessie laughed too. At the end of the show, everyone in the hall stood up and clapped as the kids were leaving the stage. Uncle Tino ran outside. The principal walked onto the stage and picked up the microphone. "We have a special treat for you all tonight," she announced, "but first you'll have to follow me outside onto the netball courts." James and Jessie followed the rest of the kids outside. Everyone was wondering what was going on. Uncle Tino's friend began to beat the pate. Suddenly, Uncle Tino ran onto the court wearing a short lava. His body was shiny with oil. He was carrying a long stick, and it was on fire. Uncle Tino shouted some words in Samoan. Then he raised his fire stick in the air and began to dance. The drum beats got louder as Uncle Tino spun his fire stick faster and faster, his arms and legs moving in time to the music. James and Jessie looked at each other in disbelief. "I didn't know Uncle Tino was a fire dancer," said James. "Me neither," said Jessie. Uncle Tino threw his fire stick up high and caught it again. Everyone clapped and shouted. Suddenly, Uncle Tino's performance was over. He threw the fire stick to his friend, who caught it and then ran to put out the fire in a box filled with sand. James and Jessie were still cheering. They ran over to Uncle Tino and flung their arms around him. He was hot and sweaty and smelled of kerosene, but the twins didn't care. "Will you drive us to school tomorrow, Uncle Tino?" begged James. "Please, Uncle," pleaded Jessie. Uncle Tino hugged James and Jessie tightly. They both guessed that meant his answer was yes. And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. But it's not the end of the book. At the end of the book, there's an interview with a Samoan fire dancer. His name is Zabian Fonoti, and he's a well-known fire dancer, famous in Samoa. So there's an interview for you to read and a photograph of Zabian fire dancing when he was little. And then there's some safety tips for fire dancing. And in the interview, Zabian talks about how fire dancing is fun and it's safe if you do it with an adult, if you join a club, if you always have someone to help you and supervise you. It's not something you try alone. But if you have those things in place, then it's really fun. Thank you for listening. Tau whāsui fua.